So I'll conclude this for the nonce by saying that I personally find it degrading and demeaning to hear a U.S. president talk about jobs as if the primary purpose of the government is to somehow assist the private sector in the creation of jobs. First of all, the government at some time or other decides, well, we're going to take away your access to the earth as your sole means of sustenance and subsistence. You no longer have access to the earth for these purposes. But all we could do for you now as just compensation is we could try to get business to allow you to enter into indentured servitude with them. Now, for a judge, it's 20 years, but for a typical low-life schmuck like us, it's 30 years. I could remember when I was in grade school, they talked about all these terrible people, these English limey bastards. They made people be indentured into indentured servants for 14 years. Oh my God, how horrible. So, with the Democratic side of the hyphen, uh, 30 years of indentured servitude, that's the best we could give you. That's the deal. As long as you have Social Security. Because without Social Security, you're on the other side of the hyphen. And that side of the hyphen says none of this indentured servitude, voluntary servitude. You know, because the 13th Amendment says involuntary servitude is proscribed by U.S. law. But, you know, you have a choice. You could starve to death, live in a cardboard box, be a prostitute, sell your body parts, things like that. Or Newt Gingrich says you could go to the mission. You could go to charities, but just temporarily, you know. So this is what they're saying, essentially. They're saying that this is the best that we could do. And quite frankly, I find that degrading and demeaning because they do all kinds of things for businesses, for defense contractors, for all sorts of people. Now, there is a group of people, mostly Tea Party conservatives, that have this thing about uh, immigrants, which is, to me, it sounds like the Ku Klux Klan. The Southern Poverty Law Center back in the late 70s, I think it was, uh, went after the Klan in Corpus Christi, Texas, because they were trying to run out these Oriental people from the shrimping business. So when I hear about these people like in Arizona and Texas complaining about immigrants, that's what it makes me think of. It's some kind of Ku Klux Klan thing. The funny thing about it is none of these people ever stop to think that the very same economic system that they champion is the very thing that is bringing these immigrants into the United States. Because the way that this system of indentured servitude and involuntary servitude is set up is that businesses want the greatest profit margin possible. It's a law of economics. And what they look at first and foremost is not how much they have to pay things to purchase things from other creditors. They look at how much they have to pay labor. If they could have cheap labor, they're always going to take cheap labor over union labor or anything like that. That's where the immigrants come into the picture. It's always been like that in the United States. As a matter of fact, the United States never got over slavery, and that's what this is really about. You know, down south, it's well, you took away our slaves. God damn it, you're gonna pay for this. Everybody's gonna be a slave now because that's just about what's happened. So all of these people that you're championing as these holy sacred individuals that are businessmen and so on and so forth, they're the ones that are bringing the immigrants in. So what you should be opposed to if you don't like immigrants is you should be opposed to the economic system that you perceive as depriving you of certain goods and services or whatever and giving it to the immigrants instead. It's not quite what is happening, but there's the potential there that it could happen. That it could happen in terms of you getting higher wages through collective bargaining agreements or whatever. But in my way of thinking, you have to make an attempt to, you have to demand that government start being a government for people, or at the very least for humanity, rather than for just a small part of humanity, which is the business sector of humanity. And those are the sorts of things that have to be done. Instead of government saying, we're going to do this in order to create jobs, what the government ought to be saying is, we're going to do things for humanity. We're going to do things directly for you as a human being, as an individual. And as a consequence of that, we're going to hire people in order to do it. We're going to hire people in order to get it accomplished. Even if it turns out to be, in some cases, the private sector doing this through contracts or whatever, still, it's the way you go about doing it. It makes a big difference if you plan these things out and your motivation is to do things for humanity rather than looking at it as, we're doing this for business. And as some consequence of that, the benefits are going to somehow trickle down to you. In my way of thinking, it's the people that come first. Business is a very small part of that. You put the people first before business. That's what socialism is all about. And that's what I'm about. So you have to find people that think the way that you do. If you agree with me, here I am. You just leave me a message, or get a hold of me through Tumblr or wherever. Check back with my blog there on Tumblr. You could look at the pretty pictures too. And make contact and associations with other people that think this way. But you have to, in a democratic republic, this is what you have to do. This is what it's all about. We lost that when everybody, in the Cold War, really, when everybody said, well, we don't have to do it. We'll just trust you. We'll allow ourselves to be censored and blah, 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 or something. You can't do that. You can't do that, because what that is what Benjamin Franklin says. It's a republic, madam, if you could keep it. And we've lost it. And now we have to reclaim it. But you have to, it's like Maestro Caccetti said. He said, in order to properly execute a step, you have to first admit that you don't know how to do it. And what we have to admit is that we lost our republic and that we have to take it back.